In 2025, Sim Lian bid 4 other developers to secure this Holland Link site at 1432 PSF PPR. 9 months later, it paid even more, 1491 PSF PPR for the plot just next door. Except this time, there was one big difference. No one else bidded. So, what should we make of Sim Lian submitting a bid 4.1% above what it just paid 9 months earlier and ultimately emerging as a sole bidder? And more importantly, if you are considering Amberwood when it launches, should you be as confident about Holland Plain as Sim Lian? By the end of this video, I'll share what buyers should look out for once Amberwood's official launch price is released. First, let us look at the two bids because this is where it gets interesting. In August 2025, Sim Lian won the first Holland Link site at 1432 PSF PPR. There were a total of 5 bidders and Sim Lian won the bid 22.2% above the next highest offer. That's a very wide margin. It suggests Sim Lian saw something more valuable in this site than the rest. That first plot is now Amberwood at Holland with 212 units, all 3, 4 and 5 bedroom units. No 1 bidders, no 2 bidders. So immediately that tells us something about who this project is probably targeting. Families looking for more space and likely buying for their own stay, and looking for good schools like MGS, which is within 1 km. 9 months later, the plot just next door came up for tender. When the tender closed, Sim Lian emerged as the only bidder with an offer of 1491 PSF PPR, 4.1% more than what it paid earlier for the first site. Put both purchases together, Sim Lian now has committed about 822 million to 2 adjoining plots along the same stretch. So why would a developer do that? One possibility is simply that Sim Lian sees more value in the second plot, whether because of its location within the precinct or the longer-term benefit of the future cross-island line interchange at King Albert Park. But there could also be a bigger strategy at play. We don't know exactly what Sim Lian has in mind. Taken together, the two purchases suggest Sim Lian may be trying to secure a sizable foothold in Holland Plain. Holland Plain was first announced by URA in 2017 and formally zoned in the 2019 Master Plan. Over time, the precinct is expected to have up to 8 residential parcels and around 2,500 homes. Sim Lian now controls 2 of these 8 parcels, and the third parcel is already slated for tender by end of this year. Seen from that perspective, the additional 4% may be less about one plot being worth more, but more about strengthening its foothold in Holland Plain. And if later plots eventually sell at higher land prices, that could also strengthen the pricing story around the first 2 sites. But more importantly, what does any of this actually mean for you as the buyer? This is where buyers need to weigh potential upside against uncertainty. The opportunity is fairly straightforward. Amberwood buyers may be entering Holland Plain before the precinct is fully built out. Today, you're looking at empty land, construction hoardings, and a master plan. A few years from now, once more homes and amenities are completed and once King Albert Park becomes both a downtown line and cross-island line interchange, this neighbourhood could feel very different. If later projects launch at higher prices, Amberwood could eventually look like early entry at the right time. Taking Lentor as an example, not every new plot there was sold at higher land price. You can see across Lentor, land bids move up and down. The first site was sold at 1204 PSF PPR, while a later site was sold for as little as 920 PSF PPR. Yet, average launch prices across the precinct generally move higher from around 2,100 PSF at the earlier launches to about 2,350 PSF by the 7th project. Why was this so? Because developers don't base their launch price solely on the land price they pay. They also look at what buyers have already paid in the same area. Once an earlier launch establishes a price benchmark and buyers have accepted it, later developers can use those transactions as reference point. And not forgetting that rising construction costs can add further pressure to launch at a higher price. So Amberwood's early entry potential doesn't depend on every future Holland Plain land bid being higher. For Holland Plain, only 2 of its 8 planned residential parcels have been sold. So buyers are still taking on uncertainty, ongoing construction, and a longer wait for the precinct to mature. So being early can offer an advantage, but only if the price you pay today makes sense. Once the official price list comes out, that's when I'll start looking much closely at individual specs and unit types. Because even within the same project, some units offer much better value than others. So, if Amberwood is on your shortlist, keep watching. Before we can judge whether its launch price makes sense, there's one more important comparison we need to make. And that comparison is Dunearn House, a project some Amberwood buyers may also be considering. The two projects are quite different, but they may still appeal to some of the same buyers, especially families looking for more space, access to good schools, and a home within the wider Bukit Timah area. And here's where the comparison gets more interesting. Dunearn House site was acquired at 1410 PSF PPR and Amberwood site at 1432 PSF PPR. There's a difference of only 22 PSF PPR or about 1.6%. So their starting land costs were actually quite close. But the subsequent neighbouring land bids add another layer to the story. The plot beside Dunearn House was later sold at 1625 PSF PPR, about 15.2% above Dunearn House land cost. The second Holland Plain plot was sold at 1491 PSF PPR, 4.1% above Amberwood site. So both Dunearn House and Amberwood sit above the later land benchmark established beside them. What the land bids reveal is a difference in how the two sites were valued by developers. Dunearn House had 9 developers bidding for the site, and the offers were relatively close. That suggests the market had a consistent view of what that land was worth. Amberwood is different. Sim Lian outbid its competitors by a wide margin for the first site, then submitted an even higher bid for the neighbouring plot, where it ultimately emerged as the only bidder. That clearly shows Sim Lian's confidence in Holland Plain. But whether Amberwood offers good value to buyers will still depend on its launch price, and the same principle applies when comparing it with Dunearn House. And precinct growth isn't unique to Amberwood neither. Dunearn House may benefit from the longer-term transformation of Turf City. Amberwood's growth story is more concentrated around the development of Holland Plain, with Sim Lian now controlling the first 2 adjoining sites. So, I wouldn't say one is automatically better than the other. They are different propositions with different starting points, different growth stories, and different risks. So rather than deciding based on the land bids alone, there are 3 things we have to look at before buying Amberwood, starting with the launch price. This is perhaps the biggest question. Once the official pricing is released, we need to see whether buyers are being asked to pay a premium for entering Holland Plain at this early stage, and whether that premium is justified. If the pricing gives buyers enough upside for taking on the uncertainty, then early entry argument becomes much more compelling. The land bid tells us Sim Lian is confident. The launch price will tell us how much of that confidence buyers are being asked to pay for. Next is the actual unit. The better question isn't whether Amberwood is a good buy. It's whether the unit you are considering is good value at that price. Because within the same development, different stacks, facings, layouts, and floor levels can produce very different value. That's why I prefer evaluating individual units rather than simply giving an entire project a thumbs up or thumbs down. And lastly, your future competition. This one doesn't get discussed enough. If you buy Amberwood today and eventually sell, what might your buyer be comparing your unit against? Remember, Holland Plain could eventually have around 2,500 homes across 8 residential sites. So you're not only buying into future growth of the precinct, you are potentially buying into future competition as well. But that doesn't make it a bad thing. Newer launches can also help establish higher price benchmark and make the neighborhood more attractive. So the question is whether the unit you choose today will still stand out when those future projects enter the market. Ultimately, early entry can offer an advantage, but only at the right price. Once Amberwood's official pricing is released, I'll put together my Amberwood buyer watch list. I'll look at the price levels, the stacks, and unit types I have shortlisted first, and the areas where I think buyers need to be more careful. So if Amberwood is on your shortlist, just comment or message me Amberwood, and I'll send you my analysis once the numbers are available. And if you are choosing between Amberwood and Dunearn House, tell me that as well. Because which one makes more sense can change depending on your budget, preferred unit size, and whether you're buying for your own stay or as an investment. I'm not here to convince you to buy Amberwood. I'm here to help you decide whether it's the right choice for you. Subscribe if you like to see my full pricing analysis once Amberwood launches. I'll see you in the next video.